We are paid, that's all. We are God.
Yo guys! I'm Yuruzi. Here's part 5 of What If Naruto Studied Fuinjutsu. While exploring the Team 7 training ground, a young Naruto happens to stumble across a strangely shaped kunai embedded in a tree. Years of frustration and deciphering later, he finally cracks the Fuinjutsu formula hidden along the handle to surprising and painful results. At the same time, a ghost of the Otsutsuki sets in motion a plan to end his family's eternal conflict. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe and check the author in the description. Let's start. Chapter 19, The Missions Begin. Kakashi gleamed proudly as he stood behind his students. After 2 months away from D ranks, they had gone above and beyond his expectations. The Hokage was pleased as well. Well, Team 7, here we are after 2 months of training, and I must admit, I am impressed with the results. He offered them smile and the genin beamed under his praise. Now, as per our agreement, you need to make up for the lost mission time. As promised, you all shall only be completing C ranks from here on out until the Chunin exams, which I expect you to enter and pass with flying colors. Any less will reflect poorly on you and your sensei. While his tone was serious, they could tell he was actually quite assured with them. I've been compiling a folder of assignments for you, and I expect it to be empty by the date of the first exam, he said and handed the manila folder to Kakashi. Your first mission shall begin tomorrow morning. Rest assured you'll face nothing too challenging right off the bat. You'll just be guarding a bridge builder as he travels back home to Wave Country. It should take about 12 days for the journey from here to there, so take the rest of the day to prepare. The genin turned to Kakashi, who said, You heard the man. Go home and prepare for a 2-week trip. Get some rest and make sure to set your alarms. We are meeting at the front gate at 7:30 and heading out as soon as our client arrives. Dismissed. The three nodded their heads and shuffled out of the room, leaving the Kakashi and the Hokage alone once again. 2 weeks for a simple mission to Wave? Kakashi asked. Something wrong? Sir, you and I both know it would take maybe 3 days with a civilian to reach Wave Country, and 2 days without him to make it back. Also, the Chunin exams are 6 weeks away. If you really wanted us to get through multiple C ranks, I don't see why you would eat up a third of our time with a low-paying C rank, unless there was something else going on. The Hokage folded his hands as he stared out the window. I'll admit there is something troubling about the mission. The gentleman who requested the mission seemed like a decent man, but he was certainly hiding something. Nothing out of ill intent, but withholding information is a grave concern. If anything were to go wrong, I'd prefer it being your genin team facing any problems rather than the other rookies. Just take a few days to observe the area, before heading on home. He turned back around and looked Kakashi in the eye. Just keep an eye out for anything strange. He chuckled as he sank into the cushions of his seat. Besides, there is always the C rank curse to worry about. Don't even joke about that. Our first mission out of the village escalated into an A rank, and that was only a D rank. I hope that stupid myth has already passed. Don't jinx yourself, Kakashi, the old man chuckled. Hours later. Hinata knelt in her closet as she went through the essentials she would need on her mission. Kunai and shuriken sets? Check. Check. Explosive notes? Check. Tent? Check. 2 pairs of clothes? Check. Rations and emergency pills? Check and check. When she was certain she had everything, she pulled out a small blue scroll from her bag and rolled it open on the floor. She delicately placed the items she needed on top of the paper, and took a step back. She raised one hand in a hand sign, and a second later, the materials were sealed away in the scroll. It really did pay off having an upcoming seal master on your team. Naruto had been adamant about sharing his Fuinjutsu repertoire with his teammates. He had nearly forced Sasuke to take his lightning rod seal, and he had insisted they all use his storage seals to lighten their loads. She made sure to place the scroll inside her shuriken pouch and began getting ready for bed. As she changed into her pajamas, she caught sight of the red scroll lingering on her nightstand. She had been thankful for the break from the looming secrets of her clan over the past month. Ever since her father had told her she should take a break from her research, she was finally getting a good amount of sleep at night. She used to stay up for hours reading, but now she had others helping her along. She really needed to do something to thank Narasama for his help. She had checked with her father earlier in the week, but apparently he had made about as much progress as she had. She turned off the light and rolled into the covers of her bed, as she got ready to drift off to sleep. As she closed her eyes, there was a bright flash in the room, which jolted her wide awake. She was on top of her bed with a kunai at the ready as she searched for the source of the disturbance. Her eyes widened and she scrambled to her night table as she noticed the scroll glowing with the kanji for 2 now shining on the outside. She snatched the scroll in her hands and whipped it open as her eyes tore through the new story. Hinata did not end up getting much sleep that night. After she copied the new segments down, she had uncharacteristically barged into her father's room to pester him awake. To say he had been grumpier than usual would be an understatement. The next morning, Kakashi and Naruto, the 2 most notable to be late, were surprisingly the only ones present as the determined time drew closer. They had chatted for a while with their client, a man named Tazuna, but Naruto had grown displeased with him rather quickly. Something about a comment regarding his height. They were surprised as they saw Hinata slouching towards them through the main street of the village. Her eyes drooped and she was dragging her feet as she approached them. She let out a loud yawn as she apologized for being late. "I thought I told you guys to get a good night's sleep." "I'm sorry, sensei," she murmured. "Let me get a cup of hot water from the guardhouse and I shall be good to go." Kakashi would have chuckled by her unceremonious behavior if they were not about to head out on a mission. A shinobi should always be alert and ready for any danger, even if they were close to home. Their first mission outside the village had proven that. "May I ask what kept you up so late?" She seemed to sober up slightly as she shot him a glance. "There was an important meeting with my father. That lasted for hours into the night. It was regarding a certain issue you know about, sensei." "Ah," was all Kakashi said as Naruto looked back and forth between the two. What was going on here? He was hurt when a thought came into his head. Is Hinata-chan keeping secrets from us? He didn't know why, but the prospect made his chest hurt. He thought he had finally found people that he could trust everything with. "Well, I haven't exactly been the sharing type either," he thought as he unconsciously rubbed his stomach. After some internal debate, made his decision. When this mission was all over, he would tell them. It would be nice to finally get his biggest secret off his chest with the ones he cared the most about. Maybe it could prompt Hinata-chan to share her secrets and for Sasuke to talk about his family. Speaking of which, Kakashi glanced at his watch as another minute drew closer to their scheduled departure time. Just where was he? It wasn't like him to be late. You better hope Sasuke shows up in the next 6 minutes. Otherwise all of you will be doing suicide sets for the next week. A chill raced through both of their spines, and Hinata was instantly wide awake. They had experienced that set only once, when Naruto had been late for snacking on ramen too long, and that one time was all the incentive they needed never to be late again. What the hell could he be doing? Sasuke was sprinting through the roads of the village as he made his way towards the front gate. He had grown careless. He had been so excited by the prospect of his mission the next morning that he had decided to run some last-minute katas before he went to bed. Because of this, he was too tired when he slumped into bed that he forgot to set his alarm clock. The next morning, he squinted his eyes as the beams of the light shooting through his blinds assaulted them. He jolted upright as he realized he had overslept. Thankfully, he had packed the night before. He had quickly changed his clothes and was now racing across the village full tilt hoping he would make it in time. His face was flushed with embarrassment as he jumped over a civilian wagon and tore through the crowded streets. This was more the dope's style than his. He had only 10 or so minutes to reach the gate before Kakashi would deem him late, and he did not need a reminder of the hell that would follow and ensue after that. He was so caught up in his thoughts he did not notice the girl in his way and they forcefully collided into each other. Ow! Goddamn baka! What the hell do you think you're? It's you! The girl pointed her finger accusingly as she glared at him. The fresh fruit she had been carrying were sprawled all over the ground. He groaned as he rubbed his throbbing forehead. Ria! What do you think you're doing? How do you expect customers to buy those if they see our products on the ground? The old manager shouted as she stormed out of the shop. It's not my fault, Maria-san. This baka ran into me. She replied as she shot up. The old woman turned her glare on the boy, but it instantly morphed to a look of horror as she recognized him. She immediately tried helping him up, but he waved her off. Oh, Uchiha-sama. I apologize for my employee's rude behavior. She must not have seen where she was going. The hell I was. This team just ran into me full tilt as I was bringing in the fruit. Ria. Apologize at once. He is the last of the Uchiha clan, and he deserves the proper respect. I don't care who the hell he is. He ran into me. I'm still waiting for my apology, duck butt. She rebutted as she stared down at him. Sasuke grunted as he picked himself up. He turned and bowed to the shopkeeper, as he said, "It is my fault, Maria-san. I apologize for the inconvenience." The old lady silenced the boy as she waved her hand. "Oh, don't be so modest, Uchiha-sama. What fine manners. Please, feel free to come by any time you wish. We have some of the best products in the village. Ria, make sure to pick all of this up and wash them in the back. Any bruised items are coming out of your paycheck." Ria sputtered as the old women returned into the store. She fell silent and shot Sasuke a death glare as he tried to back away from her. "Where do you think you're going? This is all your fault, you stupid team. You are going to help me pick these up and wash them right now." "I really can't," he said as he backed away from the intimidating girl. Even for a civilian, her presence was overwhelming. "Oh really, why not?" she asked a little too sweetly. "I have a mission, and I'm already late." "Excuses, excuses. Being late is your problem. If you weren't rushing about, you wouldn't have gotten yourself in this mess." She grabbed his ear as she started yanking him towards the fallen fruit. "Now, you are going to help me with this mess right now." He yelped as she tugged harder on his ear, and he quickly used the substitution jutsu on a passing civilian. Ria was surprised as she found herself yanking a complete stranger. "I can't be late. This is official business for the village, and I can't skirt my responsibilities." She huffed and released the man's ear. "Oh, you shinobi are all alike. Claiming to look out for us little people, but when it comes down to it, all you care about is money." He really wanted to argue with her, but he just didn't have the time. "Look, I'll help you when I get back, but I really need to go." With that he started sprinting off towards the gate. She fumed as she watched his retreating form. "I'm going to hold you to that, stupid TME. Believe me, I'll hunt you down if I have to. Duck TME. Ria. Stop shouting obscenities this instant. You're scaring away the customers." Ria fumed as she began picking up the fruit. Oh, she was going to make him pay, when he got back. Across the village, the door to the Hokage's office burst open as Kitsune marched through the door. "Kitsune? You're back early," the Hokage mused. "Everyone out," Kitsune ordered, ignoring the man's cheerful greeting. The other ANBU guards in the room quickly shined away from the area. No one disobeyed the captain when he was serious. Kitsune stared at the older man through the slants of his mask. He sighed and braced himself as he said, "It was ANBU. God damn it," the old man muttered as he stood up and pulled out his pipe. Kitsune was unsettled as his mentor began pacing about the room. It was like watching an agitated tiger pace back and forth in a cage, where the slightest disturbance would set it off. Just what the village needed, right before the exams. Especially with the concern of new villages entering the mix. Full report. Now, he curtly ordered. Kitsune began recounting his discovery of the site in Rain Country and his frequent stops along the way to River Country. The room began to fill with the heavy scent of tobacco, as the Hokage took more and more puffs at his pipe. Things were starting to line up in very compromising ways. The fact that the parents were from IWA may not have confirmed his suspicions, but they definitely made things worse if he was right. "I want our spies in IWA to send us a picture of the Otsutsuki's dead niece immediately. I want a visual confirmation from you if she was their mother by the end of the week," the Sandaime ordered curtly, giving Kitsune a sideways glance. "Consider it done, sir," Kitsune nodded, as the Sandaime finally stopped pacing and leaned back into his chair. The man didn't seem any less on edge to the masked boy, as he watched the old man close his eyes in thought. The girl left a lot out of her descriptions of events. Maybe we should have her questioned again. "I don't think that will be necessary," Kitsune quickly cut in. The Sandaime was silent before glancing at him, nodding to continue. "When I accessed her mind to copy the memories into the Jutsu totem, I met a lot of resistance along the way. I've experienced this before in patients suffering with severe trauma, and I'd say she certainly went through enough to warrant that. She probably suppressed the events after the incident, and they've only started to resurface recently." The Hokage was silent as he stared across at the bookshelf on the wall of his room. What could have set that off? "I don't know, but whatever it was, it pushed her to have her and her brother tested. The masked man seems to have been correct. The girl will never develop the Kekai Toda, but her younger brother will without a doubt. Anyways, I believe there may be another reason why she's had trouble with her memories. Kitsune paused as he considered how exactly to phrase his next line of thought. Permission to speak freely, sir. Granted, the Hokage replied, glancing at him, eyebrow raised. Kitsune paused as he made eye contact with the man. Regarding the masked man abducted her older brother, I got one good look at him before the memory ended. It was for half a second, but I saw it. His eye flashed red. The Sandaime was silent. He fiddled with his pipe as the implication seemed to roll over him. This was growing more and more complicated by the minute. How sure are you? Completely. Silence settled over them as the unspoken implication rang loudly in their minds. A Sharingan. I will look into that matter personally. Now, the real question is, what are we going to do about them? The Hokage muttered. Sir, if we're right about them, the sentimental part of me would be delighted to reunite Anoki with his family, but we are dealing with very delicate times. Who's to say returning them to IWA would be best for everyone? From your discovery, I'm not so certain they would be safe there. Not our problem, sir. The Hokage glared at him, but Kitsune did not flinch under his gaze. I believe we should return them and avoid an international incident. Their safety after the exchange is up to the Otsutsuki. Kitsune, have I expressed how displeased I can be with your attitude? Multiple times, sir. He sighed as he took another puff of his pipe. After 2 silent minutes, he turned and said, the children shall remain here for the time being. I need to think our options over very carefully. This needs to be handled with discretion, and I want to hear some outside opinions before I make up my mind. As you wish, sir, Kitsune nodded. In the meantime, I want you to follow up on the ANBU who attacked the family. I want something to give to the Otsutsuki so he doesn't believe we orchestrated the attack on his family. Also, I'd prefer it if you stayed in the village. I need every hand on deck for preparations for the Chunin exam. I'll look into this masked individual myself. He planned to send out a message in the paper. He had an old acquaintance to contact. Sir, do I have permission to interrogate the Zafu prisoner? The Hokage thought it over, and gave him a nod. Kitsune bowed and said, if that will be all, sir, I'll be on my way. He disappeared in a shunshin, leaving the old man alone with his churning thoughts. He called out for his secretary, who scrambled into the room. Yes, sir. Send a message to Jiraiya. Tell him to double time it back to the village. I want him here before the first stage of the Chunin exams begins. Also, clear out my schedule for the next hour, I am going for a walk. She nodded and bowed as he walked past her and headed to the roof. He need time to clear his head and think this over. He would have to tread quite carefully. All right men, this section of the house needs to be done by tomorrow, plow through the last 2 hours, and the first round of drinks on Saturday will be on me. Yes sir. The workers echoed, as they continued their work newly invigorated. You certainly have a way with people, a man laughed behind him. The man turned around and shook hands with Inoichi Yamanaka. Sorry about my neighbors. I understand they can be difficult to deal with. I heard you guys had quite the time getting over here. That's an understatement, the architect laughed. First, our quarters catch fire, and then we are raided by IWA Nin. I'm just glad everyone arrived here in one piece. I am as well. So is this your first time in Konoha? Indeed. I've mostly traveled around the world, working in whatever country the industry sent me. As of now, the only hidden village I haven't worked in is the Hidden Mist. Oh, I wouldn't recommend that if I were you. I know. Pity about the state of their country. Has Konoha stated if they are going to intervene in the rebellion? Couldn't tell you even if I knew. Maybe if they were to gain some ground we would consider it, but not yet. Right, he paused as he noticed the crane begin to raise the second level's roofing planks. I'm sorry Yamanaka-sama. I have to oversee this transition. Legal issues and whatnot. It's been pleasant talking with you. Maybe we can catch up again later. I'm planning on staying in town for a while, and I'm interested in getting to meet new people. You are welcome to join my men and me on Saturday. I would love to. As long as you're still buying. He boomed out laughing as he shook the man's hand, and started heading back into his house. The architect smiled as he watched his retreating form, and turned his attention back to the workers. Next week, the other architect, who was working on the clan's other house, would arrive, and he would finally catch a break to get to work. Yoshio hid his smirk. Everything was going perfectly. Kakashi had not noticed his presence on the journey back to the village, and he was getting closer to the Yamanaka faster than expected. He glanced in the direction of the lone Chunin in the trees across the street, and was thankful the security tailing him was quite light. Sooner or later, they would be gone, since the Chunin exams would draw most of the village's attention. It was almost time to really crack down on his mission. Hayashi Hyuga rubbed his temples before he took another sip of tea. He was incredibly tired from Hinata's disturbance the night before. While he wished she could have been a little more patient about the matter, he was fascinated by the new discovery from the stone room. He took another sip of tea, as he glanced down at his notes. He had read the story over and over again, creating notes linking it to the first half Hinata had revealed a month ago. He sighed as he took another look at the mysterious story, written neatly in his daughter's handwriting. He picked up where the story had left off. Over time, the fruits of their connection emerged and the rabbit goddess gave birth to 2 sons. These sons were also blessed with the power of the tree, and she finally learned to love. However, the seeds of mistrust had already been planted. The children grew up and played throughout the valleys of the land. They were allowed to roam freely, but they were given one rule: to never venture to the mountains of the divine tree. They loved their mother and heeded her warnings. Over time, they began to notice as villagers began disappearing from the settlements. Their mother comforted them that they were required for a peaceful ritual. One day, they were approached by a small, wise toad, which warned them of the injustices of their mother. If they sought the truth, they would have to venture into the forbidden lands. The younger brother, who loved his mother, was distressed, but stayed true to his mother's warnings. The older brother, who also loved his mother, was distressed, but like his brother, stayed true to his mother's warnings, until a young maiden he had cared for disappeared as well. The brothers confronted their mother, begging her to end the ritual, but she denied them, claiming it was necessary for the other's arrival. Curious by her vague response, the 2 brothers set out into the mountains and discovered the atrocities of the ritual. Spurred by this injustice, the brothers sought out the toad that dreamt, and began training to overcome their mother. They absorbed the power of the land, and honed the power they had inherited until they were ready to face their mother. The seeds of her distrust proved fruitful, as her sons finally confronted her. Spurred on by the misery of her past, she disowned and battled them with the full might of the divine tree. For months on end they clashed. The earth shook and lightning clashed, as their battle raged upon the earth. Their battle shaped the continents as their power lashed upon the land. Eventually, the brothers were successful and sealed away the rabbit goddess forever. The earth was torn apart as the moon was created to serve as the tomb of the ancient goddess. The divine tree was stripped of its power and placed into the body of the wiser, older brother. The older brother wanted to travel the world to heal the scars they had wrought upon its surface and people. The younger brother, who still cared for his mother, decided to guard her. He forged his own family, and together, they defended his mother off in the stars. Some of the younger brother's children eventually decided to leave their father, and ventured off into the world with his blessings. They too inherited the power from their grandmother. Their eyes would shine in the deepest darkness, and look into a person's very soul. Over time, the words of his mother troubled the younger brother, and he began to investigate the others of which his mother had spoken. After his weary travels, the older brother adopted the title of sage, and finally decided to settle down with a wife. He too would foster sons, and, like his mother before him, would worry about the future power they would possess. Unlike his mother, he did not worry about them confronting him for his power, for he loved them with all his heart. One burned as bright as the sun and just about as subtle. The other was as cold as the moon, and quiet as the night. He was confident his sons would lead the world towards a brighter future. However, their battle would shape the destiny of the world for generations to come. Chapter 20: The C-Rank Curse. Sensei, I believe we may have a problem. They had been traveling for about 2 days now. Summer was drawing to a close in Fire Country, as August drew closer with each passing day. Along the cooler borders near the ocean, the leaves were drawing closer to the tipping point of changing color. As they drew closer to Wave Country, the air was becoming more and more pleasant, and the nearly unbearable heat of summer was edging away. Hinata had frequently been scanning the area with her Byakugan in the event a greedy bandit foolishly thought they would have the upper hand by attacking children. Tazuna felt uneasy as he stared at the veins bulging around Hinata's eyes as she stared off in the distance. What is it? I can see 2 enemy shinobi up ahead on the road hiding in a genjutsu. They appear to be waiting for someone. How far? About a half-mile away, she replied as she deactivated her Byakugan. You mean to tell me you can actually see that far? Tazuna whistled. The Hyuga are a very prestigious clan within the leaf. Their eyes allow them to perform incredible techniques, such as seeing great distances, Kakashi informed him. You don't say, Tazuna muttered as he stared at the cute little girl in a new light. Hinata, what rank would you place them based on their chakra levels? Not very high. High Genin or low Chunin. Alright. Naruto grinned as he started stretching his arms across his chest. So what's the plan, sensei? Kakashi closed his visible eye and hummed for a few seconds before looking down at his students and saying, I don't know. You tell me. Ha! Was their uniform response. He turned to face all of them and said, this is your mission as much as mine. While I'm technically in charge, every leader should listen to the ideas of his subordinates. Being in command does not mean you have to think of everything. It just means you make the hard call of which decisions to make. He paused as he let his words sink in. While the threat level is relatively low, don't just slack off and consider this the same as one of our exercises. Even though I'm comfortable with your skill level, that does not mean you should give it anything less than your all. Even a genin can take down a Kage if he is clever enough. He seemed to be staring straight at Naruto as he said this, causing the blonde to blush as the memories from the night he stole the forbidden scroll raced through his mind. So do any of you have any ideas you'd like to suggest? Sasuke and Naruto silent as they ran scenarios inside their heads. However, Hinata beat them to the punch as she slowly raised her hand and said, Sensei, I think I have an idea. He sent her a lazy gaze as he asked, you think? She had certainly made progress overcoming her shyness over the few months with him and the boys, but every now and then she needed a little push to help her from reverting back to her previous state. Kakashi knew she needed positive support to help her progress, but he could not hold her hand forever. She straightened her back and looked at him square in the eyes. I have a plan, sensei. Good, alright Hinata, let's hear it. Gozu and Meizu, or the Demon Brothers as they liked to call themselves, were growing increasingly irritated. They had staked out this spot for over a week, just for this one day when their target would finally be heading home. However, as the minutes ticked by, they began growing impatient. Their prey was taking longer than they had expected. Things weren't going to plan, and in the shinobi world, if your gut told you something was wrong, it was usually right. It soothed their nerves when they finally saw the distant forms of the group approaching along the dirt road. The three genin up front were blissfully unaware of their presence as they loudly chatted amongst themselves. All three were smiling and laughing over some joke the blonde had said. The brothers ignored them as their attention was set on the jounin, who was currently engaging in conversation with their target. As the group passed by their puddle, they couldn't help but smirk. The jounin hadn't even given it a second glance. Konoha must have been slipping if this was the quality of shinobi they were producing. They silently rose out from their genjutsu and released their chain as they rushed at the jounin full tilt. He seemed utterly shocked as the razor edges dug into him, and he let out a yelp as they yanked on the cords to rip him to shreds. Their confidence was short-lived when the jounin's body went up in a puff of smoke. Their glee turned to shock as the bridge builder moved at impossible speeds for a man of his size and drove his fist into Gozu's gut. He gasped for air and barely had a second to register the pain as the small girl jumped across the bridge builder's back and delivered a nasty kick to his head, sending him flying back. Meizu was yanked along with his brother as the chain was still connected. He tried to release the chain from his gauntlet, but the two boys stopped him as they tackled him to the ground. He growled as he tried to pry them off and reach for a kunai, when suddenly the air was forced from his lungs. Something shifted and the weight on his chest seemed to triple as the boys crushed him. What the hell was going on? Gozu was in a similar frame of mind as he too was helpless under the weight of the small girl and bridge builder. Sure, the guy was heavy, but there was no way he weighed this much. These thoughts did not linger as a bolt of electricity burst from the trees and skewered the chain tying them together. Electricity raced along the metal cable, and they could only scream as 1,000 volts coursed throughout their bodies. They didn't even notice as the genin and bridge builder disappeared in puffs of smoke. As the final shocks dissipated, a blur raced from the tree line and their bodies screamed all over again as several light taps resulted in their muscles tensing up to a point where they couldn't move. They groaned in pain as the young girl stood over their prone forms. She looked back the way she had came, and yelled, "We did it, Kakashi-sensei. They have been immobilized. Very well done, you three," Kakashi commended as he, the boys, and Tazuna, who was staring at all of them in a new light, walked out of the forest and joined Hinata to look down at their captives. "I think you might have overdone it, team," Naruto said as he nudged the twitching form of Gozu with his foot, still getting a hand of adjusting the voltage. "Be thankful I didn't fry them," he said as he shot a glare down at the mist Nin. "They just continue to impress," Kakashi thought as he looked down at the duo. Their sparring sessions in the mornings had certainly done a wonder for their teamwork. It was very ingenious for Hinata to incorporate all of their skills into one plan so quickly. Naruto would distract the two and restrict their movements by planting gravity seals on the clones, which would provide Sasuke a clear shot to inflict massive damage, while Hinata would sweep in to ensure they were immobilized. Well crafted and well executed. Now then, Kakashi murmured as he turned his head towards Tazuna, who flinched under the man's gaze. I believe you have some explaining to do. With each step closer towards the cottage, the group felt more and more tense. Something was coming, that much they could tell. The clear sky of the late afternoon seemed like a taunting facade of the storm yet to come. Hinata's Byakugan was constantly active as she scanned the surrounding area. Kakashi-sensei. I'm still all for helping these people, but I gotta ask. What exactly are we in for? Naruto asked. Could be anything. More than likely, whoever is sent our way will be a missing nin from the hidden mist village just like those other two. Sasuke, don't even waste time with Katon Jutsu. If anyone shows up, hit them with your right hand jutsu and make it hurt. My pleasure, he smirked as he continued staring off into the trees. Kakashi glanced at Hinata, whose eyes were starting to water from the strain. She was never one to complain. None of them were. But this provided its own problem, they just never knew when to back down. That's enough. Hinata, take a couple minutes to rest your eyes. No. I can keep going, sensei, she argued. He had seen the drawbacks of overexerting the Byakugan firsthand from his time in ANBU. He had been on a mission to T country where his teammate Tia Hyuga had left his Byakugan active for 3 hours straight. His eyes had been bloodshot, and he had to have his head bandaged up to prevent his retina from receiving any more light. It had taken him a month before his eyes were fully healed. For others, the side affects can have long-term affects. I appreciate your determination, but I'll need everyone in top condition. Take a break, and that is an order. She wanted to argue, but she deactivated her Byakugan anyways and rubbed her sore eyes. You good? Naruto asked, placing a hand on her shoulder, while she wiped the water from her eyes. I'm fine. It just stings a little. The group continued along the riverside for 15 minutes before Hinata's eyes stopped stinging. They had been slightly tinged red, but they finally settled back down to their pure white coloring. Once she was comfortable they would be fine in short bursts. She reactivated her eyes and was startled by an unknown presence off to the right in the trees. Sensei, get down! Kakashi barked, as he pulled Tazuna down with him. They all hit the deck as a massive hunk of metal sailed over their heads and slammed into the base of a tree to their left. A lone figure suddenly appeared on the handle of the blade and smirked down at the genin below him. Oh, this is going to be fun, Zabuza mused as the dense blankets of fog enveloped him. The genin huddled around Tazuna as the fog seemed to close in on them. The tomos of Kakashi's exposed Sharingan swirled as he stared off into the fog. He couldn't see a damn thing. The hidden mist jutsu was formed when the user infused his chakra into the water vapor in the air and spreading it out over a wide area. The more chakra the user had, the longer the mist lasted. What truly frustrated him was that it was almost impossible to see. It was like staring into a big cloud of chakra, making it impossible to discern Zabuza's location. Hinata! Can you still see him? Hi sensei! While the fog is laced with his chakra, his body has the densest concentration. He's 25 degrees to your right. Oh, now that's just cheating, the voice taunted from the mist, sending shivers down the genin's spines. Having a Hyuga on your team no fun. Now I'll have to go out of my way to take her head too. Like hell we'd let you. Naruto yelled as he stepped in front of her. Really? The voice taunted again, as a malevolent feeling crashed into their bodies. The world grew cold as the killing intent washed into their systems. Naruto had faced some awful killing intent in the village over the years, so he handled it better than most, but what he had faced before was nothing compared to this. Sasuke's grip on his kunai grew rigid as his arm shook vigorously. Hinata was a wreck as the killing intent racked through her body. Memories of her father sending her that same disappointed look over and over again raced through her mind. It was too much. What was happening? They didn't even notice what they were doing until a warm feeling rushed through their bodies, and they found Kakashi with his hands on their shoulders. They each looked down and were horrified at the sight of their kunais nearing their throats. What had that done to them? Relax. Killing intent can be hard to counter, so listen up. It can be broken if your will overpowers the users or if you inflict pain on yourself. Trust me and use the second method. You are not winning in a bout of wills with this man. At least let them try Kakashi. It would be entertaining to watch, a void whispered in front of them. Kakashi tightened his grips on Hinata and Sasuke's shoulders as he offered them a reassuring smile. Don't you worry. I won't allow my comrades to die. Are you sure about that? The voice cut in. Hinata's eyes bulged and shouted a warning to her sensei, as Zabuza reappeared mid-swing behind Tazuna. The old man could only gasp as the blade raced towards him. Kakashi's eyes widened as he turned around. He wasn't going to make it in time. Sasuke and Hinata were still recoiling from the shock of the killing intent and could only watch in horror as the blade connected with Tazuna, only for it to clang off his body as if it had struck a piece of metal. Zabuza frowned and grunted as his attention was forced to Kakashi, who was on him in seconds. Tazuna was in shock as the genin looked down at Naruto's outstretched hand touching his leg. He was sweating bullets, but let out a sigh of relief as he tugged off a piece of paper from the man's leg. What just happened? What did you do? I just increased the density of your body by 130%. Your matter was so concentrated that it would take a lot more force or penetrating power than that guy has to leave a scratch on you. Then why did you take it off? Put it back. Put it back. And place some on yourselves for God's sake, Tazuna exclaimed as he waved for the tag. No can do, Naruto wistfully muttered as he watched the tag begun to crumple up before igniting in flames. There went 6 hours of work down the drain, but hey, at least it had served its purpose. I'm still testing them out. They never last very long and tend to burn out after the seal overloads itself. The seal can circumvent the necessary change in your mass or volume, but it eventually implodes on itself due to its limitations. Besides, that was the only one I had on hand. They take hours of time to even make one, and process is a bitch. Tazuna wiped the sweat from his brow as Sasuke and Hinata just sent Naruto blank stares. It never stopped shocking them how much he knew about seals and physics. The guy could act like a child one moment, and then drone on and on about the magnitude of magnetic fields or something equally as complicated the next. Their attention was shifted as they heard a violent crash of water over the river. Kakashi was doing all he could to redirect the blows from the massive sword. He glanced at his cracking kunai before launching it at Zabuza and reaching into his pouch for another. Zabuza swung his sword in front of him and easily batted it away. He was on Kakashi in a heartbeat and they were locked in a deadlock once again. Got to admit. You're keeping up pretty well for a tree hugger. Then again, I'd expect no less from you, Kakashi. The same could be said for you, Demon of the Hidden Mist. Kakashi grunted as he started to feel Zabuza winning out in their contest of strength. I'm flattered people in Konoha know of my reputation, he smirked as he broke through Kakashi's block and continued his downward swing cleanly through the man's chest. Kakashi-sensei! Hinata screamed. Zabuza grinned until Kakashi disappeared in a puff of smoke. Shadow clone. But when? He was cut from his thoughts as he noticed a sizzling sound coming from the kunai still falling in the air. His eyes widened as he noticed the explosive note along the handle. Shit! The explosion rocked the surface of the river, sending a giant ball of smoke into the sky. A few seconds later a hand breached the surface, and Kakashi pulled himself out from under the water. Set and match Zabuza. He frowned when the water beneath his feet started to bubble. He could only widen his eyes as a dome of water burst forth and surrounded him, and Zabuza rose up from the water next to him. I couldn't agree more, Kakashi, he grinned. Water clone, Kakashi thought. You're faster than I thought, Kakashi. I didn't even notice you switching out for a clone. I assume it was when my line of sight was obstructed as I blocked your kunai. Kakashi only glared at him from the confines of his prison. Now then. Let's get back to business, shall we? Zabuza mused as he turned his attention back towards the genin along the shore. His grin hidden under his bindings widened as more clones rose from the surface of the river. Now kiddies. Are you going to continue to play ninja and try to protect that man? Or are you going to be nice little brats and make this easier on yourselves by getting out of the way? The group was silent as they glanced back at the man they were tasked to protect. Sasuke and Naruto shared a glance, and Hinata could only confusedly look between the two as some unspoken message was passed. Sasuke smirked as he turned his attention back towards Kakashi. He glanced down at the water below his feet and back to him, causing Kakashi to widen his eyes as Sasuke started weaving through hand signs and Naruto crossed his fingers. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. 20 Narutos burst into existence along the riverbed, and they let out a unanimous battle cry as they each drew a kunai and charged. Stupid brats. Zabuza mused as he ordered his clones to intercept them. They easily tore through the lines of clones, but movement on the beach drew his attention. Electricity crackled from his fingertips as Sasuke knelt down in front of the water. He slammed his hands into the water shouting, "Raiton, taser current." Electricity raced across the body of water, slamming into everyone in contact with it. Naruto and Zabuza's clones alike dispelled as 5,000 volts of electricity raced through their bodies. The original Zabuza jumped in the air and tossed a kunai at the brat, while his hand stayed level just enough to keep Kakashi in place. The man in question had his hands placed along the walls of his prison. His face was flushed with concentration as electricity cackled along his hands. He's using nature manipulation to cancel out the jutsu. He must have a Raiton affinity. Zabuza's thoughts were disrupted as something speeded towards him. He saw the kunai flying towards him and cursed. He was still in midair from avoiding the current and barely managed to twist out of the way to ensure it didn't hit him. As it passed, he noted its peculiar shape. His confusion was short-lived as it was overcome by shock as the blonde kid appeared behind in a flash of yellow light. The kid cried out as he slapped a piece of paper onto the sword on his back and formed a single hand seal. Instantly, Zabuza shouted as he was dragged underwater by the immense weight on his back. Naruto clutched the kunai in his hand as he disappeared in another flash and reappeared beside Hinata as Sasuke cancelled the jutsu in order to block the kunai sailing towards his face. A smile flashed across his face before he inevitably hunched over and began throwing up excessively. Hinata's hands began to glow green as she rubbed his back. Even through the pain, he looked out to Kakashi on the water's surface and smiled. The second Hiraishin kunai Kakashi had given him was certainly pulling through. Kakashi got to his feet and glanced down before Zabuza burst up from the water's surface. Opting to drop his sword for the time being rather than drowning, Zabuza sent Naruto a horrible glare, causing the genin to stumble back. Zabuza was about to open his mouth when he received a nasty right hook to his face. "Your fight is with me, Momochi." Zabuza received 2 more nasty punches before he was able to start blocking. The genin were entranced as they watched the 2 A-rank shinobi hash it out. Their hands were like a blur as they raced through seals. Kakashi reached the end first as a raging tidal wave of water rose up behind him. "What?" Zabuza shouted, as he was swept away by the raging typhoon. He slammed into a tree across the river and was bombarded by the onslaught of water. After it died down, he looked up to see Kakashi strolling towards him with a kunai in hand. How had he done it? He had used the jutsu he had been planning. Could he actually see the future? Any other thoughts were cut off as 3 sharp senbon pierced his neck. He gasped and slumped over as a masked figure appeared next to him. Kakashi stopped and glared at the new arrival as he checked Zabuza's pulse. The masked figure rose and turned to him. "Thank for your help in this endeavor, Konoha-san. You have Kiri's gratitude for your assistance." Kakashi simply nodded as he fought to remain conscious. That last jutsu had taken a toll on him. He berated himself as he nearly toppled over. He really had been slouching off. When was the last time he had actually taken the time to train by himself? The hunter Nin stared over his shoulder straight at the blonde across the river. "You there? I require your assistance." "Me?" Naruto exclaimed as Hinata helped him up. "What do you need me for? Could you please remove the gravity seal you placed on the Kubikuribocho?" "The Kyubokur what now?" "She means the sword, Naruto," Kakashi panted. "Oh right. I knew that. Should I do it, sensei?" "Go ahead." Kakashi knew he was in no condition to fight. The last thing they needed was starting trouble with Kiri Hunter Nin. That sword is very important for Kiri. It's one of the 7 legendary swords, and I'm sure the Mizukage would be very anxious to get it back. Naruto nodded. As Hinata held him up, he formed one hand in a hand sign and held out his other as if he was holding a knob. He closed his eyes and began turning his hand counterclockwise. After a few seconds, he reopened his eyes and sent the masked individual a smile. "All set." The individual nodded and dived below the water's surface. Kakashi was on edge until the masked individual resurfaced and dragged the sword along to the riverbed. The hunter Nin holstered the sword on their back and picked up the slumped body of Zabuza. Something bothered Kakashi as he stared at Zabuza's body. In his current state, he couldn't tell what it was, but something wasn't right. "You have my gratitude. I wish you well on your journey, Konoha Nin." With that, the masked individual bowed and darted off into the trees. As they got out of sight, Kakashi buckled and slumped over. "Kakashi-sensei!" they yelled. Hinata and Sasuke raced over and lifted him up from the water's surface. On the shore, Tazuna had taken Hinata's place and was helping Naruto stay standing. He was blown away by what he had just witnessed. This was the caliber of soldiers the hidden villages produced. Sasuke and Hinata carried the limp man over to their side of the river, and she began running her hands along his body, bathing him in green light. That last jutsu really took a lot out of me. Doesn't help that the Sharingan eats up a lot of chakra too, he chuckled. Hinata frowned as her Byakugan gazed over the man. He was desperately low on chakra. He would need a few days at the minimum before he would be capable of doing anything. He needed to start his recovery now. Sensei, you are dangerously short on chakra. I don't understand how you're even conscious. Through strength of will and plenty of fiber, he chuckled at her shift into her medical mindset. You need to rest. Now. Your body needs to start replenishing your chakra. She held up her hand as he started to argue. Don't argue this with me. You're the medic, he surrendered. She placed her thumb on his forehead and began gathering chakra. Don't fight this. Let it flow through your chakra network, or all it will do is give you a massive headache. He nodded as she spread her chakra smoothly throughout his head. His eyes rolled up as he was forced to sleep. She deactivated her Byakugan and took a deep breath before standing back up. She turned to Sasuke and asked, now what? She and Sasuke were relatively fine. Not too short on chakra, but enough to make them a little tired. Naruto and Kakashi were definitely out for the time being. Naruto had never bounced between two kunai points before and it had taken a lot out of him. Can you help carry the idiot? Sasuke asked Tazuna. I'd be happy to, he responded over the blonde's objections as he lifted the boy onto his back. Help me with him, Sasuke said as he and Hinata lifted Kakashi onto their shoulders. He turned back to Tazuna and said, lead the way. Chapter 21, Guilt and Contact. Tsunami tightened her nightgown as she made her way downstairs. She had been violently woken up by the banging that echoed throughout the house. Inari rubbed his eyes as he drearily followed her. Who is it, Mom? I don't know, sweetie. I'm going to check. The knocking on the front door continued as a voice cried out, Tsunami. Tsunami, it's me. I'm back. Relief flooded through her body as she rushed towards the door. Father, where have you been? You should have arrived hours ago. You've had us worried sick. She chastised as she unlocked the door. She swung it open and her breath caught in her throat. She was stunned by the strange image before her. Her father had a blonde young boy passed out on his back and behind them were a young girl and boy holding up a passed out gentleman with white hair. Heh. You could say we ran into some trouble on the way here. Kakashi winced as he slowly opened his eyes. He felt like hell. Every muscle in his body screamed at him as he tried to sit up. Sensei, please don't try to get up. He slowly stopped as the source of the voice quickly drew closer. He gave Hinata a nod as she slowly eased him back down onto the bed. He sighed and tried to get more comfortable as she began running through hand signs. A familiar green glow enveloped her hands and the moment she brought them over his chest, Kakashi began to feel the aching of his muscles fade away. How long was I out? He groggily asked. About 2 days, Sensei. Your chakra levels were severely low after that last attack, she replied as she began shifting from his chest to his arms. That's what I get for copying a jutsu I've never used before, he chuckled before wincing at the constricting feeling of pain on his chest. To be honest, he was damn impressed. The demon of the mist definitely lived up to his reputation. Zabuza's chakra levels had to have been insane if he was going to casually throw jutsu like that around. What do you mean? Hinata asked, clearly confused by his last remark. I'll give you the full talk about my Sharingan when everyone is present. I don't want to repeat myself. For now, just now that I had never used that last jutsu before, and it drained a hell of a lot more out of me than I thought it would. That was one of the dangers of the Sharingan. Sure, it could allow the user to copy most jutsu they saw, but that did not mean it made the jutsu any easier to use. If he was being honest with himself, the fact that the jutsu required such an enormous amount of chakra wasn't the only reason he was in this state. Ever since he had left ANBU to be a teacher, he had become somewhat lax in his training. For 3 years, he had been waiting to find a suitable team, but none had ever caught his eye. In that time span, he had become increasingly reliant on his natural talent and intuition to get him through any missions he was sent on. God, I need to get back in shape, Kakashi thought to himself, watching as Hinata finished her inspection. Oh, the lecture sensei would have given him if he could see him now. How long until I'm back on my feet? Without any medical ninjutsu, it would have taken you about 5 days, but I've been speeding up the process. You should be fully healed by late tomorrow evening, she replied with a smile as she offered him a glass of water from the side table. Thanks. At least that's some good news, he responded, taking the glass from her hands. In the meantime, you and the boys are going to be busy. What do you mean? Go fetch Naruto and Sasuke and bring them back here. We need to talk. We're not out of the woods yet. She felt a knot of concern forming in her gut, but did as he said and started heading towards the door. Despite the seriousness of the situation, she could not help but feel a smidge of disappointment as she glanced back to see the glass of water already emptied and returned to the bedside table. Another chance to see the face behind the mask slipped by. Kakashi closed his eyes as he thought back to his encounter with the hunter Nin. He had been on the verge of passing out, only hanging on through sheer willpower. If he had been fully attentive, he would have noticed at the time what was wrong. The hunter Nin had not followed protocol. Zabuza would be coming back 20 minutes later. What am I going to do with them? Kakashi mused as he stared at his team. He was supporting himself with crutches as they stood in the woods a short distance from the cottage. I'm willing to bet that we'll have about a week until Zabuza decides to show his face again, and next time he won't be alone. You all have come a long way during our time training, and I'm certain if you work together you can take out his companion. You know it, sensei. Just leave it to us. Naruto boasted with a grin. However, it will not be as simple as that, Kakashi cut him off. They were silent as he continued. Remember, their objective is not about settling a vendetta, although I'm sure Zabuza wouldn't mind getting another crack at us. Their objective is taking out Tazuna. I can't protect him, focus on Zabuza, and worry about his companion all at the same time. You boys are going to have to work out protecting Tazuna and dealing with the hunter Nin at the same time. What about me, sensei? Hinata asked. He gave her a silent look before he replied, you're going to be helping me with Zabuza. Hinata's eyes nearly bulged out of her head and she felt her knees starting to shake. What the hell do you mean, sensei? Hinata-chan is amazing, but she can't take down an A-rank criminal. Naruto shouted as he stepped in front of her. I agree. She's can handle herself, but she's not up for fighting a jounin, Sasuke cut in. I don't expect her to, but her Byakugan can see through his hidden mist jutsu. It is irritatingly a rather good deterrent against my Sharingan, so I'm going to need her to help locate Zabuza. So what? That just means he'll target her instead of you, Naruto growled, taking a more possessive stance in front of the girl. You're right. That is why I don't plan to have her with me the entire time, which brings me to my next step. Naruto, I'm going to need you to design a seal for me, Kakashi calmly replied, ignoring Naruto's outbursts. Even when faced with the prospect of a new seal challenge, the concern did not leave Naruto's face completely. What do you mean, sensei? I want you to find a way locate Zabuza in the mist. If I can have Hinata help keep track of him until we can plant a seal on him, then it will make it easier and faster for me to take him down before he decides to take a swipe at Tazuna. Naruto closed his eyes as he rubbed his chin. I suppose I could try. I have a couple ideas, but I would need some time to figure it out. You have 6 days. Concentrate and get it done. Fine, but if I can't, I don't want you placing Hinata-chan in Zabuza's way. That's fair enough, though it doesn't matter unless Hinata is willing to do it. I won't put her in a position she's not comfortable with, he said as they turned their attention to her. To be honest, Hinata didn't know what was bothering her more. The idea of facing that man again without her team or her body's reaction to the idea. Hinata could not help but feel some shame course over as she could not stop herself from quivering. The last time she had been close to Zabuza, he had caused Sasuke and herself to completely freeze up from his toxic presence. She had grown leaps and bounds over the last few months, but she was still a teenage girl faced with an opponent clearly out of her league. She had questioned herself in the past whether or not the Hokage had made the right decision in placing her on this team. After their run-in with the IWA shinobi at the lumberyard and their progress in training, she had begun to feel that maybe she did deserve this spot on the team. Yet, now as she was faced with an overwhelming threat, she tensed up and was too scared to act. She looked at the two boys and was surprised by their grave looks of concern. Naruto's words rang through her mind. He was right. She couldn't take on an A-rank criminal. He had been so fast on the road that even though she could see him, he still broke through their guard. However, the boys' other words ran through her head as well. They both thought she was skilled. Amazing even. She realized their looks of concern didn't mean that they didn't think she was too weak to handle it, they just wanted to look out for her. This realization roused something inside her. It took her a few moments to recognize the feeling, and she was surprised when she realized what it was. Eagerness. Eager to prove them wrong. She had always considered herself below the two of them. That's why she felt so driven during training. To catch up to them. Now she realized that catching up wasn't truly what she wanted. She wanted to go past them as well. To prove to them that she could handle anything thrown at her. If they needed her to do this, she would try her best. Her shaking didn't fully dissipate, but she was able to get it mostly under control before firmly looking Kakashi in the eyes. I can do it, sensei. I will try my best to help you. That's my girl, Kakashi pleasantly thought, nodding as he straightened his back. Alright. In any case, that means that you two boys will have to deal with his accomplice and guard Tazuna simultaneously. I got Tazuna, Kakashi-sensei, Naruto firmly stated. They were all surprised by his declaration. Really? Kakashi asked, you actually want to be the one guarding him? I got a trick up my sleeve that will make guarding him a breeze. Trust me, not even Zabuza will be able to get past it, he smugly stated. That's a pretty big claim. Is that bluster or are you certain? Kakashi asked. Unless he knows as much about seals as I do, I'm positive he won't be able to lay a finger on the old man. Don't you worry, sensei. After it's set up, I'll be able to help Sasuke with the other guy too. You can't just leave clones Naruto. I don't intend to. Trust me, sensei, I got it. Kakashi finally relented and gave the boy a nod. Alright then. I'll leave it to you, which means you'll be dealing with the Hunter Nin alone until his little project is complete, Sasuke. Sasuke smirked as he shot Naruto a grin. Just try to not to beat him too badly until I get a shot in, the blonde grinned back. With that taken care of, let's discuss what we'll be doing in the meantime. Naruto and Sasuke, you two will be alternating guarding Tazuna throughout the week. Naruto, whenever you are guarding Tazuna, I want you to have a clone at the house working on your idea. Otherwise, I want all of your time spent thinking of a way to track Zabuza. You got it, sensei. He replied with a salute. Sasuke, I want you practicing your right-hand jutsu. Your opponent is likely to be from Kiri as well, and will likely specialize in Suiton jutsu. Try to reduce the charging time for some of them. Got it. Hinata, you and I will be prepping for dealing with Zabuza. You three are already fast, but you'll need to be faster to deal with Zabuza's speed. Are we clear? Yes, sensei. They echoed together. Good, then let's get to work. Sasuke, you'll be guarding Tazuna today. I'll meet up with you around 1 o'clock. Dismissed. Roger, the boys replied as headed back to the house, leaving the other two alone. After he was sure the boys were out of earshot, Kakashi turned to her and said, Hinata, I want to make sure you are absolutely comfortable with this. You don't have to save face in front of the boys. It's not that, sensei, she muttered as she twisted her shirt. I don't want them to keep seeing me as someone who needs to be protected. I wouldn't say they think that. They know how capable you are. Maybe, but unconsciously they might think differently. I don't just want to prove them wrong, I want to make it so there is no doubt in their minds that I can take care of myself, she firmly replied, raising her gaze to meet his eye. She was silent for a few moments, before muttering, I also want to prove it to myself. Kakashi winced slightly as he knelt in front of her. I'm proud of you for pushing yourself to take that step out of your comfort zone. In my eyes, you have already proven you are a fine kunoichi. Plus, if I wasn't sure you could handle it, I wouldn't have asked. Her face lit up in a small smile, and the faintest blush crept to her cheeks. Thank you, sensei. No problem. Now let's get down to work. Are you ready? Yes, sensei. A little louder. Yes, sensei. That's what I like to hear. Now, like I said, we are going to focus on getting you fast enough to keep track of Zabuza. How are we going to do that? I'm going to teach you a well-known technique called forcing. You already know that pumping chakra into various parts of your body can help you move faster, jump higher, and hit harder. Forcing involves spreading chakra across your body at once, causing your brain to work overtime. You'll think faster and move more smoothly than ever before. Hinata couldn't suppress a frown. It couldn't be that easy. What's the downside, sensei? The downside is that it eats up a lot of chakra. I mean a lot. You have certainly increased your reserves over the last month, I won't deny that, but not quite enough to continuously use forcing. Even I can't keep it up for long. You're going to have to learn how to shut it on and off frequently to conserve chakra. Your Lion Fang technique will also help you with this by stealing your opponent's chakra. Please activate your Byakugan and I will give a demonstration. He smiled as he began forming chakra and watched as her veins crept out along her face. She was going to be ready. He was certain of it. Naruto pulled at his hair. Damn it, damn it, damn it. He cursed. He had been at this for 3 days now, and he had little to show for it. Oh, he had plenty of ideas of how to keep track of Zabuza, but each of them involved getting Hinata closer and closer to the missing nin than he was comfortable with. You couldn't just track a seal just because it exists. It had to release a signal that could be followed. His first thought had been to use radio waves. By setting up 2 transmitters on the bridge and 1 on Zabuza, he could create a seal to help triangulate his location and send the information to Kakashi. Trouble was, that this would take a long time to write out, and take up a lot of space. Plus it would put Hinata in danger, so no go. Next he had thought of using magnetism. If he could form a seal to make Zabuza's sword a charged south magnetic pole, he could create a sort of compass for Kakashi to follow. Again, this involved them getting up close and personal, plus Zabuza could just stitch the sword leaving it pointless. It all came down to how comfortable he was with letting Hinata get close to that man. The thought of her so close to danger brought an aching pain to his chest. He was at an impasse. If he decided not to make the seal, Kakashi might make her stick with him the entire time in order to keep track of Zabuza. If Naruto did make a seal, he would just be pushing her in harm's way. Damn it! He reiterated as he banged his fist on the ground. Something I can help you with? A soft voice called out behind him. He was startled and turned around to see one of the most beautiful girls he had ever seen approaching him. The slender girl was so close that he was surprised that he had missed her presence. Who are you? Just a friend, she replied with a soft smile. You can call me Haku. You are, hello. Well, I'm Naruto. Naruto Uzumaki. What are you doing out here? I'm just gathering some herbs for a ointment I'm preparing. I think the real question is what are you doing out here? This doesn't seem like the best spot to work. She wasn't exactly wrong. He was sitting in a clearing out in the middle of the woods, with his books and supplies scattered around him. Being in nature helps me think. I've always liked to come out into the woods whenever I'm facing a new problem, he replied as he turned back towards his books. That's good. That shows a very mature outlook for your age. Hey, you're not much older than me. I suppose not. Now, what seems to be troubling you so much? The girl asked as she gently took a seat next to him. Naruto was quiet as he stared at his hands in his lap. He didn't know why he felt like talking to this person, but his stress had been building over the last few days and he needed an outlet. I'm stuck in a bad spot. A friend of mine could be in serious danger unless I work something out. She could be hurt if I don't figure something out. You make it seem like she can't protect herself. That's not true at all. He retorted as he sprung up, suddenly heated. She's amazing. She can kick so much ass with her special taijutsu thingy and her made-up moves. Yet, you seem to think that it is your mission to protect her, the girl chided, ignoring his outburst. Naruto was silent as he stared back at the ground. I just want to make sure she stays safe. It sounds to me like this person is very important to you, Haku smiled gently. Images from their first day of their training flashed to his mind. He remembered his feeling of utter content as the 3 of them dozed off against the training posts. Their warm bodies pressed against his had filled him with a strange feeling he had never really felt before. Yeah, I guess she is. Both of them really, he murmured. Well, I think that is a very good mindset to have. You see, I believe that when a person has something important to protect, that's when they truly become strong. The girl paused as she let her words sink in. I don't know if it's any consolation, but if your friends feels in any way the same as you do for them, I'm sure they can overcome whatever obstacle seems to be in their way. You said for yourself that you trust this person's abilities. Maybe it was about time that you proved it. Naruto's eyes slightly widened as the girl's message sunk in. Maybe he had been looking down on her. He had let her go off after the IWA Nin because he had been too exhausted to do anything, but the moment he could move, both he and Sasuke had torn after her worried sick. Maybe they were coddling her. It was time they took a step back and let her rise to the challenge. He slightly blushed as he realized he had been silent for an awkward amount of time. He tried not to make eye contact with the girl as he tried to think of something else to say. Why, you said you were looking for herbs, right? Do you mind if I help? She closed her eyes and offered him a smile. I would be happy if you did. So the two of them set out gathering the necessary plants. It was actually relaxing for him as they searched for the specific kinds Haku needed. It helped relieve some of the tension that had been building up in him for some time. After they were done, they stood smiling across from each other. You know, you actually kind of remind me of my friend. Oh, really? Why is that? She makes ointments too. But you're both soft-spoken and have a way with calming me down. Haku offered a smile. May I ask her name? It's Hinata. That's a lovely name. Well, I thank you for your assistance. These will be perfect to help the one I hold special. I'm sure you will be able to solve your little problem. Maybe try to approach it from a new angle. With that, she offered one last smile as she started heading out of the clearing. Oh, and... Haku had his back turned so he couldn't see what Naruto's reaction would be, but he was willing to bet it would be hilarious. I'm a boy. Haku's prediction came true as Naruto's eyes bulged out of his head. His jaw dropped to the ground as he clutched his head. No! He's even prettier than Hinata-chan. Haku gave one last chuckle as he waved over his shoulder and walked away. Everyone else had long since returned to the cottage that night, before Naruto returned. Inari was quiet upon his arrival and left the table in a hurry. After their argument the previous night, he didn't feel like being in Naruto's presence. Any progress? Kakashi piped up from his newspaper. I've had a lot on my mind, was his only response. I guess not, Kakashi frowned. When it came to seals, Naruto was usually better than this. What was holding him up? Naruto shuffled his way to the table and stood in front of Hinata. He avoided eye contact as he uttered, could we talk outside? Alone? She was surprised, but fought back a blush as she nodded. Sasuke sent them a confused glance as the two headed outside. What were they talking about that they couldn't discuss here? All the while, Kakashi was studying his reaction. It would be troublesome for the team dynamic to be disrupted by something as petty as jealousy. Naruto shuffled his feet as he stared at the ground. He didn't know what made this so difficult. Hinata actually had to stifle a laugh. This was a complete role reversal. Usually, she was the one too nervous to talk. How's your training coming along? Naruto asked. Hinata could tell this wasn't really what he was after, but she replied, it's going well. I've got the basics of the technique. It's just a matter of turning it on and off fast enough so it doesn't massively drain on my reserves. Good, was his reply. They awkwardly stood there in a few minutes of silence, as the full moon reflected on the water. Finally, Hinata started to ask him what was wrong, when he said, I'm sorry. She blinked and stared at him. She was confused. What did he have to be sorry for? I haven't been fair to you. What or why? No, I have. I could have had multiple seal ideas done days ago, but I haven't because I didn't want you to have to get so close to Zabuza. I've been a bad friend and a bad teammate. I should trust you enough to take care of yourself. I've just been so worried that I didn't offer you the respect you deserve. I want to apologize. Hinata's eyes softened and she gave a kind smile. I accept your apology, Naruto-kun. While I can understand why it's troubling you, it also means a lot that you care. They both started blushing and gave each other a shy smile. Besides, she said as she shot him an uncharacteristically sly smirk, I don't want to just be equal to you boys anymore. I want to be ahead of you. Wah! Where is that coming from? He asked as he took a comical step back. Let's just say I have a long way to go before I earn the spot that the Hokage has granted me on Team 7, she said as determination gleamed in her eyes. What are you talking about? You've already done that. You took out 2 Chunin all by yourself. That's incredible. Maybe, but not compared to the legends who were on this team before us. I want to live up to that legacy. Naruto's mind flashed back to the conversation he had with Kakashi when he gave him his second Hiraishin kunai. He had been ecstatic when he found out his current sensei had been taught by his idol, but he never really made the connection that the Yondaime had probably been on Team 7 as well. This made him curious. Whatever happened to the Yondaime's teammates? What were they like? So what do you think you are going to do about the seal? Hinata asked, breaking his train of thought. I don't know, Naruto replied as he rubbed his head. Every seal I've thought of involves you guys tagging Zabuza with it, and I doubt he's going to just let you. I know that's the idea, but he's also not going to wait around for you to just spout off his location to Kakashi-sensei. He'd be on you guys in a heartbeat before you could even speak. His eyes widened as a new idea popped into his head. Hinata shot him a confused look. Naruto's mind was racing as Haku's words raced through his head. Maybe try to approach it from a new angle. All this time he had been basing the designs of his seals by requiring Zabuza to be tagged. A new train of thought entered his mind, and he shot Hinata one of his signature Cheshire grins. What is it? Did you think of something? She asked excitedly. He smirked and replied, what if we don't have to tag Zabuza? Confusion splattered across her face. What do you mean? That's the whole point of you creating a seal. No, the point is so we can track Zabuza in the mist. Kakashi-sensei never said Zabuza had to be the one we planted a tag on. He just needs to be able to keep track of Zabuza's location. I'm still not sure I follow. I'll explain it inside. Come on. He grabbed her arm and started pulling her back towards the house. She was dragged along and barely kept up as they rushed back inside. Naruto kicked open the door and raced to the table in a blur of yellow and navy. I got it, Kakashi-sensei. I got a plan for putting down that sneaky bastard. Kakashi kept his composure as he sent him a bored look. On the inside, he smirked. Whatever the two had discussed, it had certainly raised the blonde's spirits and given him the boost he needed to figure out his seal problem. Alright then, let's hear it. Time flew by, and before they knew it, a week had come and gone. They were more somber than usual that day. As of now, Zabuza could return at any moment, and this time he wouldn't be alone. That morning they all set out with Tazuna, with Naruto leaving a few clones behind with Inari and Tsunami. As they drew closer to the bridge, Naruto's nose started twitching and a pungent odor filled his nose. He may not have been an Inuzuka, but his nose was nothing to slouch at. He growled, placing them all on edge. He smelt blood, and a lot of it. They finally arrived at the bridge, and Tazuna let out a cry of horror. The bodies of his workers were sprawled across the bridge, soaked in blood. Kakashi frowned as a familiar, ominous mist started enveloping the group and they all took up sides around Tazuna. From the other side of the bridge, they could see two dark shadows drawing towards them. Each of them tensed as the forms of Zabuza and the hunter Nin clearly came into view. Zabuza was sporting a different outfit from their first encounter and he had his head tilted in a playful manner. However, his eyes were just as full of bloodlust as they had the first time they saw him. You know, it's not polite to keep people waiting, Kakashi, and I believe we are due for a rematch, Zabuza taunted as he hefted the ridiculously sized blade from his shoulders. Kakashi remained silent as he raised his headband over his left eye, revealing the 3 tomos of the Sharingan. He sent his team a quick glance, and they returned it with a nod. They all knew what to do. Naruto, you're up. You asked for the job, and you've got it. Make sure nobody gets to Tazuna. You got it, sensei. With that, Naruto summoned 4 clones, which surrounded the old bridge builder. They reached into their bags and pulled out vials of ink and several brushes as they began drawing intricate symbols on the ground. Sasuke pulled out a kunai as he stepped in front of the group of clones, and sent a glare at the masked boy across from him. He couldn't help himself when he started shaking. He was just too excited by the prospect of fighting a serious opponent. The fog fully encased the group, and Kakashi felt Hinata leave his side. She had her preparations to complete as well. Tazuna could only gulp as he felt the killing intent of the demon of the mist rise and direct towards him. All of this was because of him. He glanced down at the blonde boys busy at work beside him, and made a silent prayer that no one would have to die because of him. Whether he liked it or not, by the end of that day, someone on that bridge was going to end up dead. Kakashi's glare didn't change as he dived headfirst into the mist after Zabuza, who leaped back into the obscure safety of the mist. He wasn't worried about his students' abilities. He was worried about when it would all go to shit, because even the best laid plans fell apart upon contact with the enemy. Chapter 22, Battle on the Bridge. Zabuza had his eyes closed as he crept throughout the mist. Despite what his towering figure and giant sword would suggest, he was actually quite light on his feet. It was a necessity for users of the hidden mist jutsu. While the target's vision was impaired, the user could still be found if they were too noisy in their approach. Zabuza moved with the patience of a cat as he stalked Kakashi. His steps were virtuously soundless, which was certainly impressive for someone whose weapon of choice was a broadsword/cleaver. Haku had been sure to fill him in on the effects of the Sharingan over the past week. Its tricks wouldn't work on him if he kept his eyes shut, and he had been practicing attacking targets blindfolded since he was a child. He had been creeping up on Kakashi's left side, when the man's head swiveled in his direction and he fired off a volley of kunai. Zabuza was surprised but was able to block the kunai with his sword. Keeping his eyes closed, he retreated into the mist as Kakashi raced after him. He pumped chakra into his feet and retreated further back along the bridge. He was curious how Kakashi had detected his presence. He was sure he had been completely silent, and he hadn't been leaking any killing intent. While it would work on the brats, it wouldn't work on someone who had been through the shit Anbu had to deal with. While Kakashi was closer to the right side of the bridge, Zabuza decided to take the opportunity to get closer to the bridge builder. He started creeping up the left side, but was startled when he detected Kakashi racing towards him again. He was on him in a heartbeat, and Zabuza was having a difficult time guarding himself without the use of his eyes. He sprang into the air and fired off a water bullet jutsu, as he retreated back towards the incomplete side of the bridge. One time was by chance, but Kakashi had detected him twice now. Something didn't add up and it didn't sit right with him. He was a master at silent killing, and he was properly regarded as one of the greatest users of the techniques in several generations. So how the hell was Kakashi following him? He could sense every presence inside of the mist, and he could tell the Hyuga girl was not with him. He wasn't using an earpiece either, since he would have heard him talking. What the hell was going on? Haku had sprung into action the moment Naruto started inscribing something on the ground. He had seen how clever the blonde boy could be with Fuinjutsu with that strange teleportation technique and the gravity seal from their last encounter. He was not anxious to find out what tricks the boy had in mind. He was intercepted by the Uchiha boy, who sent him a cold stare. "Your fight is with me." The two clashed as Sasuke blocked against Haku's impeccable use of Senbon. He handled the needles just as well as Sasuke handled kunai. He was surprised how well the tiny needle-like weapons held up against the force of the boy's strikes. They clashed once again. As they fought for dominance, Haku swiftly kicked out one of Saskatchewan's legs, causing him to slightly stumble. In his moment of weakness, Haku palmed 3 Senbon and flung them over the Uchiha's shoulder. 2 raced towards the clones and 1 was sent directly at Tazuna himself. The old man flinched as the original Naruto reached up and took the attack with his left hand. He winced at the pain as the 2 clones on his left and right were popped. He tugged out the Senbon, which stung like hell, and clasped his hands back together into his favorite seal. Immediately, 2 clones appeared in the place of the destroyed ones and continued working as if nothing had happened. "I see he is quite skilled with that technique," Haku thought to himself, as Sasuke re-engaged him. "If I'm going to get at the bridge maker, I'm going to have to take out the original first. Not that the Uchiha is making it very easy for me." Immediately afterwards, Haku caught a nasty uppercut from Sasuke, followed by a round kick sending him flying backwards down the bridge. Sasuke smirked as he settled back into his neutral stance. This is what he had been looking forward to, a real challenge against an opponent who could actually draw out his full strength. His spars against Hinata and the Dobe over the past 2 months had been challenging in their own ways, but there was little variation. Over time, he would begin to expect certain maneuvers and fall into a pattern. Besides, he knew those battles were never truly dangerous. The worst that could happen would be a little damage to his pride. This opponent was someone who wouldn't hesitate to kill him, and he loved every moment of it. This was real and it would push him to his limits. His eyes flashed as he raced towards his opponent. The hunter Nin began flashing through seals and whispered, "Showdown, 1,000 flying water needles of death." The water hanging in the mist started to compress and shape into razor-sharp needles, all aimed at him. The hunter Nin lowered his hand, and they all raced towards him. Sasuke flew through his own seals shouting, "Katan, fireball jutsu." The ball of fire raced towards the needles, evaporating them on contact. It continued to surge forward, forcing Haku to jump back. He raced through more seals before stopping and shouting, "Showdown, water wall." The water gathered on the bridge and in the air, gathered in front of him and compacted into a dense wall harder than stone. The fireball hit the wall, causing a small explosion and sending a large amount of steam into the air. Haku knelt behind the wall and was startled as he sensed a presence approaching him from the side. He raised his arm as he blocked a kick from the Uchiha boy. Sasuke twisted in midair, spun around, and brought his other leg down upon the masked boy. Haku blocked it with his other hand and threw Sasuke back. He twisted in the air and landed on his hands and feet as he slid back on the wet surface. The hunter was upon him in an instant, and they re-engaged with the renewed vigor. "You're fast," Sasuke grunted, as he dodged a swipe past his head. You are not too bad yourself, the masked Nin responded. However, Sasuke smirked, you are not quite as fast as my teammate, and I've spent years sparring him. Sasuke ducked under Haku's jab, and fell backward as he kicked out the boy's legs. Spinning on his hands, he twisted and delivered a firm kick into the boy's stomach, sending him flying backwards. He flew towards the other side of the bridge, and slammed into the concrete wall. Sasuke stood back up and smirked. At this rate, he was beginning to feel disappointed. The masked boy slowly rose up without a word, and sent him a chilling stare. Sasuke couldn't see the boy's eyes, but he felt the weight of the cold look. He seemed almost to sigh as he began forming more hand signs. I apologize, Uchiha-san. I had been hoping to finish you quickly and refrain from causing you too much harm, but you have left me no choice. I am sorry for what is to come. Sasuke shrugged off the comment. Sounds to me like someone is grasping at straws. We'll see, won't we? The boy responded as he finished his last hand sign. Sasuke tensed as the air suddenly felt like it had fallen 10 degrees. All around him, the water in the mist seemed to materialize as rectangular blocks of ice formed into a dome surrounding him. What is this jutsu? The masked boy calmly walked towards the dome, and astonished him as we walked into the ice mirrors. Where there had been one, there were now over 20 masked individuals starting down at him, from the mirrors. This is the demonic ice mirrors jutsu. I apologize. Your death will not be a pleasant one. Sasuke tensed himself, as a Senbon barrage was flung at him. Back across the bridge, Zabuza wanted to scoff. So Haku finally decided to crank out that jutsu, eh? The Uchiha brat must have been better than I thought. With that technique, he'll be done with them shortly. Zabuza frowned as he turned his attention back to Kakashi. At least one of us is getting somewhere. The Jounin was about 35 feet from him, remaining perfectly still. Now the question was, how did Kakashi keep finding him? He would slowly start stalking the Jounin, but if he took too long, Kakashi would suddenly know his location and race after him. He would jump back a safe distance and retreat further into the mist, which would seem to lose him momentarily. Then the whole process would repeat all over again. He just couldn't get it. He was a master of his craft, and he was absolutely certain there were no holes within his approach. That wasn't the only thing. He was nowhere near Kisame's level, but he certainly had one of the larger chakra reserves within the 7 swordsmen. He hadn't been casting the hidden mist jutsu too long, but he could notice a larger than normal drain on his chakra. He was already at 3/4 of his total chakra, and this was beginning to worry him. Something was wrong, but he just couldn't place his finger on it. How was Kakashi doing it? Hinata's Byakugan flared as she made her way towards Zabuza's location. Her head was beginning to feel a little funny from the blood rush, so she took a moment to orientate herself as she disengaged from the bridge and jumped from pillar to pillar. After the blood flow returned to normal, she reattached herself back to the underside of the bridge, and stood directly under the demon of the mist. It had been so clever. The risk of planting a seal on Zabuza was that if he found it, he could easily remove it and lure Kakashi into a trap. Naruto had decided to use one of his earlier ideas for a seal involving magnets, but instead of placing the tag on Zabuza, he would place it on Hinata. With her Byakugan, she could stare straight through the mist and the concrete of the bridge. As he would silently stalk Kakashi, she would be right there beneath him, walking upside down along the bottom of the bridge. The seal placed on her would attract the corresponding seal on Kakashi's left glove, indicating the direction Zabuza would attack from. Afraid of opening his eyes due to the Sharingan, Zabuza would retreat further into the mist, faster than she could follow, causing Hinata to chase after him and repeat the cycle all over again. All the while, she had her twin lion fangs technique active as she stalked underneath him. It wasn't as effective due to the several feet of concrete between them, but she was slowly, but surely draining away at his reserves. It was now a game of who would slip up first. It all came down to if Kakashi could get a hit off on Zabuza as he grew weaker, or if Zabuza connected the dots, and went after her. Her eyes did not hide any fear in them. Only steel determination as she ate away at the man's reserves as he started a new cycle and stalked towards Kakashi. She was keeping track of the boys as they dealt with their respective roles. She was greatly concerned about Sasuke, who seemed to be trapped in a jutsu that would follow him wherever he went. She wanted to help him, but she could not disengage now. She had to trust that Naruto would be able to finish soon enough and help out their other teammate. That's it. All set, boss, said the clone behind him. Good. Do it. The original ordered. The 4 clones knelt on one knee in a square around Tazuna and started racing through hand signs. After 21 signs, they stopped and slammed their hands into the intricate symbols surrounding them. For Flame's barrier seal. They shouted in unison. Immediately, a purple cube sprung to life around the bridge maker and the clones. This had been one of the first things he had learned from the advanced set of Fuinjutsu. Apparently it was inspired by a form of barrier ninjutsu of a similar name, but designed to work with seals instead, so that even if one of the forecasters were interrupted, the barrier would continue to stand. Naruto glanced back at Tazuna and sent him a serious glare. No matter what you do, Tazuna-san, don't touch those walls. They will incinerate anything that touches them. Tazuna instantly jumped back from the purple walls surrounding him. I'd suggest just sitting in the middle and wait until I come to release you. Don't worry, nothing is getting in or out of that barrier. Where are you going? Naruto turned his attention back towards the dome of ice in the center of the bridge. I have to go help my bastard of a teammate. Besides, heroes always show up late anyways. Sasuke cried out as he was peppered once again by the barrage of Senbon. He had been at this for minutes now, and he was starting to resemble a human pincushion. He panted as he gripped his kunai tightly in his hands. He had tried to form the hand seals to form the fireball jutsu, but the boy would spray him in needles before he could ever get through it. He was not going to die her. Not to something as pathetic as Senbon. Not while that man was still out there. He had a mission to complete. He felt fear rise through him as the next wave of Senbon started to begin. No. 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 Suddenly, the world seemed to slow down as all of the Senbon racing towards him appeared in a new clarity. The world seemed much more sharp as it had before, and he found it easier and easier to block the oncoming barrage of Senbon. He twisted through the metal soaring through the air, and deflected almost every Senbon that had been sent his way. He had missed a few in the back, but the results were still staggering. Impossible, the masked boy muttered. Sasuke panted as he stared at himself in one of the empty mirrors the boy was not currently occupying. His breath caught in his throat as red eyes stared back at him. He had done it. He had finally done it. For the first time in years, a genuine smile plastered itself across his face. The Sharingan. He had finally developed his Sharingan. The beauty of this moment was interrupted for him as his loud teammate crashed through one of the ice mirrors and soared towards him. He crashed into him, toppling them both over. As much as the Sharingan had served as a blessing, it was already serving as a curse. Now, the beauty of one of the proudest moments in his life would be forever be engraved in his mind with the image of his ridiculous teammate plowing into him and ruining it. Across the bridge, Hinata was so focused on staying close to Zabuza that she did not notice the green scroll in her pouch start to glow purple as the markings inside began to change. Watch where the hell you're going, Dobe. Sorry for trying to save your ass team. I guess that's what I get for trying to H. He was cut off as he stared into his teammates' eyes. They were red, with a single tomo in each of them. You did it, he whispered before a smirk plastered itself across his face. Took you long enough. Sasuke couldn't help but return the smirk as they went back to back, staring back at the emotionless masks of the Hunter Nin. So, that stuff is just ice, right? Naruto asked over his shoulder. Seems that way, Sasuke responded. Well, then turn up the heat in here already, he smirked as they both began rushing through hand signs. Haku was surprised by the blonde's sudden arrival and nonchalant banter that he was not quick enough to stop the boys as they landed on their final hand signs. Katan, Grand Fireball Jutsu. Katan, Fox Hellfire. Yellow and red flames raced along the edges of the dome as the two boys spun in a circle. Naruto took the upper screens, as Sasuke dealt with the bottom ones. They kept up a continuous stream of flames as they twisted around, bathing the whole area in a raging inferno. This blast of light and heat drew attention from everyone on the bridge. Tazuna was shocked as he watched the pillars of fire race out of the cracks in the down. Further down the bridge, Zabuza just smirked as he watched the flames die out. The two boys stood triumphantly in the middle of a puddle of water. They were grinning ear to ear, but that stopped instantly, when the ice mirrors immediately began to reform. Ah, you've got to be shitting me, Naruto complained as the dome reformed around them. The mirrors flashed as they were all reformed and the image of the masked Nin reappeared in each one. That jutsu must require a ridiculous amount of chakra to maintain. You can't keep that up forever. Naruto taunted as he pulled out a kunai. Maybe so, the soft voice replied, but you two shall be dealt with long before that. And once again, Haku let loose his barrage upon the boys. While Kakashi was momentarily distracted, Zabuza rushed him as fast as he could. This time the Jounin did not notice him until he was right behind him. He swung his sword horizontally, aiming to cut the white-haired bastard in half. Kakashi jumped up and landed on his hands on top of the blade, and rode it until Zabuza threw him off. Kakashi landed on his knees and fired off a kunai, before racing towards him, only to be thwarted as Zabuza dashed back into the mist once again. Kakashi glared into the mist as he glanced down at his left hand as Hinata began to reposition herself. This would all be over soon. Zabuza's rush to capitalize on Kakashi's moment of weakness and his fear of the Sharingan would end up being his downfall. Zabuza skidded to a stop, and leaned against the wall of the bridge. He tried his best to cover his panting, but he was starting to get tired. Now he was really frustrated. He had about just shy of half of his total chakra left, and he couldn't understand why. He hadn't been firing off too many jutsu, and the hidden mist should not have been eating up this much. He continued to catch his breath and was surprised when he felt Kakashi's presence disappear from the mist. He twisted and brought his sword above his head, as Kakashi landed on top of him, jabbing a kunai straight down. Metal clanged against metal, as Zabuza shoved the man off. Kakashi twisted in mid-air and sprinted at him full tilt once he landed. Zabuza was finally pressed against a wall. The two men clashed their blades, as Zabuza tried his best to keep up with Kakashi while his eyes were closed. His efforts weren't bearing much fruit as slashes and cut raced along his body, as Kakashi easily darted inside of his guard. Zabuza swung his left arm back towards him, but Kakashi caught it and twisted it behind his back. He kicked the man forward and raced through seals. Zabuza stumbled forward, and couldn't orient himself in time as Kakashi shouted, "Suetun, water bullets." 3 bursts of water hit him in the back, sending him flying forward. He violently rolled down the bridge, until stabbed his blade into the ground, dragging him to a halt. He panted as he shot Kakashi a manic glare through his bindings. Kakashi was simply strolled towards him as he ran through more hand seals. "Toad oil bullet," he muttered as he shot oil along the sides of the bridge. Zabuza stumbled to his feet as Kakashi released 2 weak fire jutsu, igniting the oil along the bridge. Zabuza instantly shut his eyes as he began to stare at Kakashi's approaching figure. How hard will it be on your reserves to keep up that mist, while the fires work to clear it away? Zabuza sneered as he twirled his sword in his hands, ignoring the pain from the cuts across his body. "What have you done? How the hell are you draining my chakra?" "It wouldn't be wise to reveal one's tactics to the enemy," Kakashi casually stated as he continued to press forward towards him. Zabuza growled as his sense throughout the mist was becoming blurred. The burning fires were making it hard for him to keep up his cloak of chakra across the air. Things were beginning not to look good. "Hurry up, Haku, and stop messing around. I need you over here now." The boy in question paused as he stared down at the two boys. With Naruto's presence and Sasuke's newly developed Sharingan, they were certainly holding their own better than before, but they were still being whittled down. An explosion further down the bridge caught his attention as he heard Zabuza's cries of pain. His attention was immediately drawn into the mist as he strained to hear what was happening. He overheard Zabuza's comment about his chakra and immediately began to worry. He could sense Zabuza's reserves, and there was no reason that they should have been that low. Furthermore, Kakashi seemed like he didn't have a scratch on him. There was no way he could tell where Zabuza was coming. The Sharingan could not see through the jutsu. The only one who could was. It hit him like a ton of bricks. The Hyuga girl. Hinata. Where was she? Haku was certain he had seen her at the beginning of the fight, but now he realized she had been suspiciously absent this entire time. His eyes raced across the bridge as he tried to locate her. Zabuza would have detected her if she had slipped by and was behind him. The bridge builder still sat within the burning walls of the barrier seal, which he would have to find a solution for later. He couldn't find her anywhere. Forwards, back, left, right. That only left. Down. He muttered. The ice mirrors melted in an instant, splashing the boys in freezing water. They were confused as the Hunter-nin raced away from them and headed towards the side of the bridge. Sasuke recognized his intentions an instant sooner due to his Sharingan, but the same thought echoed through their heads. Hinata! Hinata was beginning to reposition herself again and fire up her lion fangs, when she noticed the masked individual who had been engaging the boys turn and flee towards the side of the bridge. He knew, she realized. Zabuza-sama. The Hyuga girl. She is beneath you. Zabuza let out a snarl as it all clicked and he raised his sword above his head. Kakashi sprinted into action, but was too late as Zabuza slammed his blade down into the bridge. It wasn't deep enough to cut through the bridge and reach her, but the force was certainly enough to shatter the concrete floor she was standing on, causing her feet to disconnect from the belly of the bridge. Her eyes widened as she started free falling towards the water. Her Byakugan flashed as she noticed the masked nin racing along the bottom of the bridge right towards her. She reached into her pouch and pulled out a kunai attached to a spool on ninja wire and tossed it as hard as she could at one of the pillars of the bridge. It lodged itself firmly into the pillar, and she swung out towards the side, as the hunter nin assaulted her with Senbon. She twisted and blocked as many as she could with the kunai, but she was unable to guard against all of them. Two slipped past her and hit her in the shoulder, making it harder to keep her hold on the wire. She gasped at the pain, which became even worse when she slammed into the pillar with an uncomfortable thud. She had little time to get comfortable, as the hunter nin was on her in seconds. Hinata reconnected to the wall, and proceeded to dodge and weave as the hunter nin attacked her with a vigor and speed she had not used on her teammates. She did everything in her power to avoid his attacks as she tried to dislodge the kunai in her shoulder. The boy's renewed speed astonished her. Had he been holding back this entire time? She could only stare in astonishment as two spears of ice appeared in the boy's hands, and he swiped at her like one cut with a pair of scissors. Making the split-second decision, she pumped chakra into her legs, and kicked off of the pillar out over the water. She sailed away from the bridge as the hunter nin stopped and watched her descent. Hinata's eyes snapped behind the hunter nin and she twisted in midair as she caught a kunai racing towards her. The masked boy's head swiveled around as he stared at the other boys, who had joined them under the bridge and were holding on to a thread of ninja wire and greatly heaving their teammate back. Hinata's descent became an arc as she began swinging back towards the bridge. Haku raced up the pillar he was on and snatched up Hinata's kunai from earlier. Just as Hinata was at the bottom of her arc and passing under the bridge, Haku tossed the kunai at the wire, severing it. Hinata fell and skidded across the surface of the water as she tried to remain afloat. The boys only had a second to respond as Haku shot off several water bullets in their direction. They were both able to dodge the first volley, but Naruto was pegged during the second one. He flew out towards the water, and crashed below the surface of the water. Haku caught up the Sasuke and they began trading blows just as before, only this time, Haku had decided to crank up the speed. This is getting bad. I need to move the fight away from here, Sasuke thought as he jumped away from the masked nin. He jumped onto one of the pylons, pumped his legs with chakra, and dove straight down towards the water. As the water grew closer and closer, he rammed two kunai into the pillar, and began sliding down the side. The masked boy was right behind him as he raced full tilt down after him. The hell is he doing? He's going to kill himself, if he doesn't decelerate in time. Sasuke swirled down the column and kicked off in Hinata's direction. Haku slammed face first into water at the base of the pillar a second later. Water sprayed up into the air from the collision, until it paused and began swirling towards the surface as the masked nin emerged riding on a vortex of water, which swirled violently around him. Hinata and Sasuke panted as a hand rose up behind them, and Naruto dragged himself out of the water. Okay, he panted as he stared at the masked nin glaring down at them. That sucked. They silently agreed with his blunt statement as they took the moment to catch their breath. Sasuke was pulling needles out of his body as Hinata fretted over Naruto's fall. Are you okay, Naruto-kun? A fall from that height could have seriously damaged your spine, Hinata asked as her hands glowed green. I'm alright. My back is going to be killing me tomorrow though. Aw man, that was like the worst backflop ever, he groaned as he rubbed his back. Hinata placed her hands behind both of them as she began healing the bruises and scars that were starting to form. They felt a hell of a lot better than they had when they were stuck in that dome. After they regained their stamina, they locked their glares at the masked nin, who had stepped off from his water spout, and was standing unnaturally still across the water. Nobody spoke and the only sounds were the waves crashing against the shores and the fires burning up above. Zabuza roared as he brought his sword down towards Kakashi. The agile man weaved out of the way and delivered a nasty right hook to the man's face. As if he hadn't felt it, the man sent out a nasty kick, which sent Kakashi back a few feet. You must think you're so clever, don't you, Kakashi? Having the Hyuga girl follow me around draining me like a parasite. I can't take all of the credit. It was mostly Naruto's idea. The blonde, stupid one who's got a knack for seals, correct? Now I know which one I'm going to get first after I'm done with you. Presuming there's anything left after Haku is finished. I hope you're not too disappointed that I think they'll surprise you. They have no idea what they're in for, Zabuza chuckled. I took in that boy years ago, and he's been shaped into the perfect weapon. His only fault is that he is too kind at heart, but your kids have gone off and really pissed him off. I had to chisel my way out of a building the last time someone pissed him off that much. The entire block was frozen over. Below them, the water began to contort as several dragon heads rose from the surface of the river. They let out a deafening roar as they stared the genin down. The masked boy touched the base of the jutsu and the dragons began to freeze over. Their mobility didn't seem to change as the new ice dragons continued to weave and roar at the genin. Haku raced through more hand signs and a massive column of water rose from the surface. You see Kakashi, some say hell is a raging inferno, others say that its depths are frozen over, Zabuza mused. The genin took a step back due to the sheer size of the mass of water, and shocked as it was sent hurtling up towards the bridge. Your kids are about to be in for the ladder, Kakashi. Now that the Hyuga brat is out of way, we can finally get down to business, Zabuza smirked as he slammed his sword into the ground. Kakashi was surprised as a giant column of water rose over the side and slammed into the bridge. Bricks and wooden planks were dislodged as the oil fires were immediately put out. Kakashi knelt to his hands and knees and used his chakra to strap himself to the floor as the wave raced over him. He was ravaged by the blunt force of the water, and he could see Zabuza standing in place holding his sword, presumably smiling like a maniac. As it finally receded, Zabuza pushed back his hair and sent the man a feral grin through his bandages. He returned to a familiar stance with one hand in the air, and the dense mist encompassed them once again. Kakashi glared at Zabuza as his figure increasingly became harder and harder to see through the thick mist. Now let's try this again, his voice taunted deep within the mist. That's it for part 5. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.